Okay, welcome to UTOKing with Gregg. I have Baron Short, who's been on, and then we did a wonderful Mindedness Revolution series together. But we're now here at UTOKing with Gregg. I think this is my first product promotion, actually. We are here to talk about an unbelievably cool product that Baron and some of his colleagues have invented called Zendo. And Baron's going to talk us through it. It's very relevant for the Mindedness Revolution about how we're getting healthier relationships to ourselves. And it's a whole new angle, in my estimation, on how I might do that. Baron, welcome.
Thank you, Gregg. Happy to be here once again. Some of you know we did that, as you said, the Mindedness Revolution. And so that's a great place to double click and go deep into what we're talking about with mind. Today, I'd like to just talk a little more about a little bit of the Zendo journey, personally and professionally. Hear your thoughts about it as well, Gregg, as you've tried it, and kind of demo briefly this device. So for folks that don't know me, again, my name is Baron Short. I'm an academic physician, now professor with tenure. It took a little while to get there, but we got it.
Well, we can drink to that.
Perhaps a little more freedom of speech, we hope. So
let's not double click on that.
Trigger. Yeah. And so my specialty and part of my passion is in brain stimulation. So for folks familiar with some of the UTOK stuff, I'd say I'm a Mind One specialist. For people who have no idea what we're talking about, into how to change the functional circuitry of the brain to improve and treat mental illness. And so some of the most common things we treat are, depression, really severe psychosis, OCD, things like this that take people's lives. And so that's perhaps another episode we could just dive into those things. But as part of that, I'm also, and chronically have been since in my 20s, I'm 51 now, very deep into meditation and meditative practices, in part out of having having experiences and then trying to chase that because it seems that people have been doing that for thousands of years of changing their mind through mental practices. And I too, like many people, found that to be a little hard. It's kind of hard. Yeah. So, I'm a slow learner, 30 years of practice with the interface of brain stimulation and essentially mind modulation. Very interested in how those things can interplay and can we help people with mental wellness, not just the mental illness, right? Before they're ill. So that's kind of where some of this work has come with brain stimulation to enhance meditation. Even as a resident physician, I was very interested in these things, doing functional MRI research with meditation, and I would capture and look at brain regional activity changes with practice as people had progressed in certain types of practices, and was already doing some work with transcranial magnetic stimulation and meditation. So anyway, that's a little bit of the backdrop. And my friend Bashar, co-founder of Zendo, was working in our lab, a brain stimulation lab, and he's a technologist. The guy's brilliant. He's great. He actually now works at Neuralink, so they think he's great too. And he came along with a type of technology called TDCS that I'd already been using in trying to treat folks actually with depression and schizophrenia. And he had a montage or a particular way to place this and said, I want you to try this out because I know you're into meditation. And so the first time I ever tried it, in a 20-minute session, I was so dropped in and so relaxed, calm, and focused. I felt like I was in my third hour at a meditation retreat. And I periodically will go do meditation retreats. And I said, damn, I think we have a thing here. But we said we should study this, right? We're academics, and we said let's study this. And so we did one primary double-blind placebo-controlled trial and a couple open-label trials. I think I actually have some slides on this, so I could actually share and talk about that. Let me see.
Actually, before you do, let me offer just for people to be thinking about this in a way that actually I just went through my class and my class seemed to value this. So I'm going to give you my plasma ball model of Mind 2 real fast. Okay.
Good.
And then we'll see what we're doing with this potentially. So um, here's my trusty little plasma ball. Okay. And the core element of mind two. So mind two is your consciousness. We talked about this in getting like attention to it. So you pay attention to your attention system and you pay attention to awareness. Okay. Basically I would describe your mind two. That's your phenomenological experience of being, is that you have a field, a conscious field of potential. Okay. And we can study that with states, like you go to sleep or you go under or you get really excited in terms of your mood. So the background field is like by states, and the Mind One firmware is the basic architecture that gives rise to the potential of that. That tells you whether you're going to sleep or not. If you got psychotic problems, that thing is not really well organized. My mom is dealing with some dementia. She's got issues of how's that hang together. So Mind 1A allows that to hang together and its basic structure and function. And then when it comes online, you turn it on. So you turn it off, want to go to sleep, turn it back on. Okay.
Nice.
And then what I imagine here is each one of these is a potential conscious content, meaning that your awareness could be focused on it. Okay. So you have awareness, and then you see how awareness is flashing. And then finally you push on, that's your attention. Okay. So then your attentional structure from your frontal lobe. What do I care about? What's relevant to me? What does this mean? That then brings these things on to the stage of your awareness. Okay. So a little plasma, just 3 parts. It's a field that gets turned on from your embodiment. It then affords potential conscious contents that then are attended to. And this is really important, I think, for this, because how we attend, right? I mean, what is meditation? It's about awareness and attention, fundamentally, right? And how we attend, and can we like strengthen our attention muscle, and when is it jumping around monkey mind? And to me, what Zendo is unbelievably doing is it's popping a really cool thing. I'll tell by my own why I really want to promote this product, because fundamentally it's clarifying this attentional structure, it feels like to me. Anyway, that's just some thoughts.
No, that's spot on. I love that, Greg. And I think that helps in the framework of, in one way of saying meditation, or a type of meta-attentive, meta-aware practices that we've kind of in the Mindedness Revolution framed in a particular way. And then this is a device essentially trying to implement and nudge the brain in a way it's already trying to do through those practices. And then there is a subsequent outcome for that. And maybe when we come back to the experience of it, I'll talk a little bit about that journey too.
Beautiful.
Part of it, for better or worse, is trying to show justification that that I'm not trying to sell people snake oil, right? And that we've got some really great things we're doing. So let me pull.
Yeah, I will just let's just make a point on that. Advertisement is and marketing. Actually, I struggle with UTOK on this. I'm so, maybe to a fault, bound by what I would call intellectual integrity, honesty. So I couldn't be on here if I didn't think this made really good sense, and even controlling for my own biases and my friendship. So I'll just say, take it for what it's worth, but at an unfiltered way. Actually, this whole marketing concept is stuff I'm not really good at, because I'm so we're all biased, we're all self-serving, and we do everything to enhance our own little thing. And I feel like we're a little exaggerated on that in certain domains of our public sphere. So I'm cautious about that, but I will say, even through the caution, and I'll tell more about why I believe it in this, but I've been very happy to be advocating for this for people in a way that, because it's absolutely the opposite of snake oil as far as I'm concerned. Go ahead.
Yes, indeed. And I've been involved in these practices, I guess with Zendo probably around 2015 or so, and still going. And I would argue, a lot of what I talk about in Mind 4 come out of being able to slow, to disengage from thought and being able to examine the layers of our mind, to then have a framework to go subsequently talk about a framework to understand that in a naturalistic way. So for me, It's been transformative, to say the least. All right, let me see can you see that?
Yep.
I guess. Okay, great. So first of all, just a little bit of the justification of what are we doing. So this was a model of our first version of Zendo, where with TDCS technology. There's an anode and a cathode, and it's the flow of electrons moving between
did you
a
say
device.
what TDCS actually stands for? Can you
Transcranial direct current stimulation. So
Perfect,
that is involved with some of the primary technology. And so what this is a image of, or a series of images looking at E-field modeling. So if you were to model and say, based on current dynamics, what's happening, at the skin, at the brain, et cetera. And so we have a anode and a cathode, where essentially people will say this a little bit different, but anode is where the electricity is actually entering. Cathode is where it's exiting. And in a very simplified way, anode increases the propensity for neurons to fire, and a cathode decreases the propensity of neurons to fire. And so the hypothesis was, in meditation, these brain regions, this anterior insula tends to be more active across different types of meditation, and this medial frontal pole tends to be less active, right? It's turning down, or turning off even the default mode network, which has to do with these more medial structures of the brain. And so our thought was, hey, could we stimulate those areas that are already being nudged through the practice, but we're giving it a boost? And the E-field modeling just showing that the current that we do use, this is a 1 milliamp, 1.5, 2 milliamp, that the current does suggest that it's entering the brain and changing active brain structures. There's also what the cranial nerve in the forehead that also is perhaps playing a role, and that's a whole other story. I just want to briefly talk about.
Actually, I'll pause.
Oh,
Can we pause, because you made a couple of comments that I want to make sure people can relate to. Okay, so
sure.
He mentioned your default mode network. Okay, so the default mode network runs sort of we'll just put it in sort of personal terms. Hey, what's relevant for Gregg? Okay, the default mode network is just going along in the background. It's basically grabbing potential stuff my mind is going to wander around. It's also going to grab aspects of what's relevant for me in my story, and then it will jump into my consciousness in various ways. So it's sort of like, hey, my egoic core self relevance system. Now, if that thing's really active, okay, then it's like, oh my gosh. In fact, a lot of neurosis is really being self-absorbed. It's like, oh, is this a threat? Did I do this wrong? A self-consciousness structure, either privately, is my mind working okay? What's wrong? Why am I so reactive? What do other people see? Private and public self-conscious, right at the heart of neurosis. That default mode network would make sense that it's grabbing, acting, and forcing itself to say, oh, what about me? And a whole bunch of meditation is getting more into a salience, task, attention, awareness structure that lets the ego go. I mean, hey, this is all these concerns you have are in your mind. They distract you. You got to get out of that and into your life, to use an ACT phrase. So anyway, the default mode, the idea that you could tone down aspects of that, especially that prefrontal element of it, and activate the answer to get more salience and emotion clarity. Anyway, there's a lot of good, just basic phenomenological rationale that cuts into the organization of that particular mode and network.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And I appreciate you kind of double clicking on that, because you're essentially part of, in a sense, meditation is turning down that default mode network, that amount of imagination of the future that we could neurotically loop about, and the ruminative memory of, gosh, I wish that was different, but it wasn't. And now I ruminate about it. And then this kind of insula brain region does a lot of things, and it does have an integration of interoception. So like where the body is located, what it is feeling like, is the body tight or loose or whatnot. And so it is, in a sense, you could almost think, be oversimplification, but you could think about even those type of practices are downshifting out of ego, right? And that is generally more pleasant state of mind than the particularly ego that's like caught in a social justification value. Like, can I validate my existence? Am I okay? Is the world going to accept me? So So our first study, we did a double-blind placebo-controlled trial where we had 15 participants do some initial screening. We did like mood, visual analog scale, Toronto mindfulness scale, the FFMQ, which is another mindfulness questionnaire. So we would measure before, they would have a session, and we'd measure after. And people were randomized either to sham stimulation, where we turned it on and turned it off, it's like a real transient dose, versus 1 or 2 milliamp dosing. And what we could see, and they were separated by 1 week, so they were their kind of own crossover design trial. And some of the findings, I don't know if that shows up well here, but the idea of like at milliamp dosage and then looking at pre-post score changes that, people doing sham versus 1 versus 2 milliamp, like people's mood was better, or in terms of, did you feel sad? Like, no, I feel less sad. Or
Less sad.
Do I feel excited? No, I actually feel a lot less excited with getting, 1 or 2 milliamp dosing. How about restlessness? So every reduction in restlessness over sham. And the sham was people were listening to a kind of meditation app, guided meditation. Okay. So these were folks, the sham was active meditation, right? And then the folks getting the 1 and 2 milliamp were doing some type of guided practice in addition to the stimulation. And the sense of being calm, much more calm, observing awareness, acting with awareness. It was actually down in the sham group, where if you're having people kind of relay where there are substantial changes or improvements. So this was, we would take from a first pass, this is not a medical device, it's a health and wellness device, but this is a great result is the way I would say that. And we did a subsequent open label trial, and essentially people, 28 folks they knew they were getting this, and they did a pre and post. These were folks we were in Brooklyn, New York. These are folks after work, and we're assessing like what's their stress level and whatnot. And then we measured their mental state changes before and after Zendo. So in this case, this blue is before baseline, and then the red's after. So you see this massive drop in feeling stress, like 75% reduction in stress. And even their mind excessively wandering. So like their ability to meta attend, to their ability for to put their attention where they want, to recognize if their mind was wandering and bring it back, actually budged. And this is in single session, which normally for moves and things like this, it may take you a month or so, like in a mindfulness-based stress reduction. So that was a big win. And then we did a retreat in Vermont, Lowell, Vermont. We took folks that called themselves beginner meditators, and that most of the average were 10 years of practice, 1 hour a day, which most people would not call that a beginner, but that's how
I guess I'm, holy good Lord, beneath that is complete novice. I guess that's where I'd be if that's the.
So these folks we were able to we basically wanted to test and say, can they do this? Like, so the other cool part, this is part of a silent retreat. So like at the very beginning, we got to talk, and then I got to show them how to use it. And the science of it was actually say, if I give you instructions on how to do this, can you do it? Yep. And the reality was people could, and they were doing 2 sessions a day, each session 20-minute, and then we would do some science talks at the end of the day. This was Shinzen Young, who's also a meditation teacher, but very like naturalistic and into science. So it's kind of that kind of group of folks. These are like scientists and engineers and things like that. And we were just looking at dosing, and it was pretty cool at that point. That was in 2018. We weren't even selling this device, but 75% of people would have loved to have bought one. And I even had some meditators grabbing me by the shirt. You're like, I need to have this thing, because they had such a big big shift for them in terms of their practice. So that's a little bit of the science. I don't know if there's any double click of anything you had, Gregg, about that, or you think that a viewer might have, but I don't want to belabor it either, so.
Right. I mean, so to me, what that shows is, okay, you dive into a product here, you're going to run some good controls, you get an indication about what people are seeing, both in terms of whether they know they're doing it or not, what's its utility, and you check a bunch of boxes that says, I mean, obviously, if you could do larger studies with better controls or things like that. But in terms of the basic gist of like, hey, does this thing appear to work the way we'd expect? Do we get the effect sizes that we're seeing? Is its utility? Is the experience relative to negative effects, etc.? That gives a really good indicator that you're onto something systematically. You've systematically asked this question and gotten systematic data back that says absolutely you can have some good confidence that this thing is doing what it appears to be doing.
Exactly. So then we launched version 1. So that was in around 2020, and we sold out. People loved it. We had even Olympic athletes using this in like Taekwondo. Because it does enhance people's focus and attention, and which then can be used for both mental and physical performance. And so that was a real hit. And then we were faced with the choice of, do we just make more of the same, or do we make something better? And so we actually decided to pause and make it better, because it was still, you saw like that image of like these pads, and it was connected in a wire, and it's handheld thing, and it looked too medical. And we said we need to make something more elegant, right? So that's what we did. We made a headband, right? And people have it comes in a case, and
a beautiful. Well, right. At some point, that is a beautiful case, dude. You did a good. Whoever designed that thing reminds me of the Apple people. That's definitely. Although it's black rather than white, but it's got the same kind of super smooth, cool style. So I got to give you kudos for the box for sure.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. And it comes with a set of 20 pads, so people will open these up, take out pads. I'm going to pull that up. Here's the little pucks where these pads will go in, and so people can literally just pop these pads into the pad holders. And this runs with an app or without an app. I think right now it's about 50-50 of like, what do people prefer? About half people use it without. Some people like to do it to track their meditation sessions or listen to some of the audio recordings we have. We have like some kind of trying to keep it simple. And so not a lot of it's not like you have 3,000 meditations to pick from. It's just a real simple protocol, because it's more about the stimulation with the device. And so if you were going to use it without the app, you can just turn it on. People can select their mode, and then they put it on their head, essentially like this, and then they can press start. And there's a little beat. And then what'll happen is then over the next like 20, 40 seconds, actually up to a minute, people feel this like tingling sensation. That's normal. Sometimes it feels warm, like a normal sensation. And as the skin actually adapts to what that is, that's kind of ramping up. Then people have about a 20-minute session where what I usually will do is just, I first say do whatever you want is probably the most important part. And then number two, trying to get in the right framework, of like not taking your meditation too serious, you're not grading yourself. It's not the time to bring out your inner critic. Being a little playful with slight effort is useful. Getting in their body in a nice relaxed state, meaning upright but soft, and then kind of taking some slow, deep breaths. And when you're taking a nice, big, deep breath, you're kicking in your vagus nerve, right? So that's slowing down. It's kicking your parasympathetics. It's like causing you to slow down your heart rate. And so this is you're nudging the brain, and you're probably stimulating trigeminal nerve, and through the breath you're stimulating your vagus nerve. And then what people will generally do over the next 10 minutes or so, some people will describe this like body drop, where their body gets like very relaxed, and they notice that their mind is not wandering so much. Like, so your mind's going to wander. That's what it's built to do. If you're not actively in a task, and something like just sitting or breathing is kind of a simple enough task, the mind brain system wants to wander, and you just notice that, and you bring your attention back. Right. And so, what do people say? Essentially, most people using this will have a moderate, substantial gain where their body is more relaxed, their mind gets quiet during the session, and then after the session. Some people describe like even a type of mild flow state that they can feel for several hours after the session. As people use it more regularly, that can extend past like a couple hours into like most of the day. Sometimes it'll have even carryover effect. And so I'm speaking about this from my own experience, and also from folks that have used this device. Cool stuff can happen. That's on a more modest claim, which I would want to put out there, of like, quiet your mind, calm your body, be a better version of yourself. Like that would be a fair claim I would put out there. And for other folks, they can go a little bit further with it. They really kind of learn to become more mindful with their attention. They learn to drop out of ego. I've had people have what's called, the terminology in contemplative language is non-dual awakenings, where they're kind of, the self model drops out, and they're just in this isness and beingness. And it could be without content, like if their eyes are closed and ears closed, or it could be with content, right? The world, they're taking in the world, and they feel this oneness, right? People talk about this oneness, which is when our modeling system makes us too small, right? It's a pretty tough, can be a pretty tough thing to be in. And so people look into these methods, right, of ways of being able to step out of that ego.
Totally.
So anyway, that's been part of the journey. I would say even cool things can happen. Like I use this all the time to improve my focus. Over the years, I use it actually less, but when I first started using it for several years, using it very regularly. Cool things like even at the retreat. So I was at that retreat and doing this twice a day. And I was in a kind of a flow state. I came back and meditate regularly and just stayed in flow for quite some time. So anyway, I could talk about that forever. Gregg, you've been testing this out a little bit. Kind of curious, what you're finding for yourself.
Perfect. So obviously, Baron and I had talked about it, and I'll admit it makes very good sense to me. So I'm positively inclined toward Baron. I'm positively inclined, but I will also say that when he sent it to me, and I'll say right off the bat, he did send it to me. I would buy this. What is it? $220. And we can talk a little bit at the end, but basically this is, I can 100% say, and I'm fairly frugal with my money, but I would lay, $250 down for this thing easy based on what's happened, to me. So I got it, and I put out there, there's a bias, but I want to just see what happens. And we hadn't talked too much about it. And Baron and I had this, and so I'll just basically recount what we did after he sent it to me and I opened it up. I actually made notes somewhere around here. I still have this, and basically it's like, I'm just going to, as if I didn't know Baron at all, and just be open about this, and then see what happens. And so first off, the box was badass, so I noted that. And the basic structure of it was really easy as far as I was concerned. And it came with a little thing that at first I thought might be a little annoying. You had to watch a little video and get through it to turn it on and get all that. But it was super easy and clear. So in terms of a user interface, that's one of the issues. Hey, can I use this? How do I put it on, etc.? and I thought it was the only one problem I had is I tried to charge it out of a general adapter and it didn't seem to work. And then the one that was sent, I realized I needed to use that, and it wasn't clear at some point whether it was charging or not. So I complained a little bit about that. I complained a little bit, hey, you have to have these pads, what are these things, etc. And so these are just it does feel a little bit of a mild irritant. It's just a mild irritant here. So those are some of the negatives. But it's cool. It puts it on. It's fine. And this is what happened to me. Absolutely. What happened to me is I'm a decent meditator. I mean, I don't have a huge amount of practice. I'm pretty clean psychologically. Like my whole training is to be aware of, especially through the psychological mind structure. But I definitely zoned into my attentional structure and the embodiment of awareness really easy. I absolutely noticed an easier process of less mind wandering, monkey mind, as it's sometimes referred to, and less battle between that. Certainly it would happen, but it wasn't as dramatic. And then afterwards, there was a centering, a dropping. Definitely, I mentioned that there's a drop and sort of a easy cleanness in relating to the world. And indeed, even something that, and you didn't tell me that this is part of it, although you then tell me about sort of an ease to want to do things that wouldn't come with the normal, do you really want to do this? And I'll give it an example, which I shared with you. And I didn't know this was coming at all, but I planned on cleaning out my basement. I live with my parents. There's a basement, half basement. And there was discussion about decorating the house, and I wasn't sure. Well, after the second episode that I did, the first one I actually had on 2, I wasn't sure. That I did 4, and I do use 4. We can talk about the different modes. But I found myself saying, I'm doing that. I'm decorating the house, and I did. It was a 2-day, 3-day. We have pictures of it. It was actually came out very nicely. I found all my parents' stuff, and then ended up decorating their house. They're getting at an age now where it's hard for them to do it, so I did it for them. That's one reason I'm living here, to help them out. And then I also proceeded to clean the whole basement. And found myself. So it was actually for 3 days, I was engaged in active projects, and I was doing this every day at first, and I probably now do it an average of 2 to 3 times a week. We can talk about dosing. I just did it right before this system. So that, and I mentioned that to you, and you were like, yeah. You're like, actually, that's not surprising, right? You want to say a little bit about that as an impact that you've seen, or at least experienced?
Sure. Yeah. So, we didn't, in those initial studies that were more like single session, other than the retreat, we didn't study how does it change what you're doing during the day. But as we had customers buy this version 1 and now version 2, and in our own experience, it's a pretty common phenomena that, in addition to the mind being more calm and quiet and the body more relaxed, there's actually a little more energetic motivation to get things done, and that it's not a pain in the ass. Like, it's actually enjoyable and easier to do. So I definitely know of people, if they had a rough night of sleep and they're having a tough time in the morning, they will, and they have a Zendo, they will Zendo, so that they have the energy, motivation, and capacity to knock stuff out. If they have a particularly busy set of meetings or something that, or something even that the ego might kind of want to kick in, they will Zendo so that they actually come in more calm and confident and have the capacity to knock stuff out. And that's not just for mental and social activity, to your point of material, physical activity, that people not uncommonly will find that they have the energy, motivation, and interest to get more things done. So it's kind of we're using it in a sense, to enhance people's mental performance and well-being. And that also then translates, although we're not going for higher productivity, that it does translate into higher productivity, both professionally and personally. It's fun. My wife and I Zendo, super fun to do that together. It's super fun later. It's good stuff. Yeah.
Lovely. So yeah, I mean, in fact, I mentioned, hey, Zendo and Go, right? Like that,
Yes.
that rolled off the tongue for me, and that spoke to what had happened. So that's the other thing that I would notice. UTOK pulls a lot of stuff together for its unified approach to psychotherapy. But one of the things it really grabs is what's called ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. It weaves that into COMMO. But that comes to my mind because the motto, the short-term motto that Steve Hayes generated for what ACT's trying to get is get out of your mind and into your life. And what he means by mind is this self-conscious, private, public, self-conscious. Oh no, mind. What does it mean? Through the thoughts are you, and you're grabbing them, and you're grabbing them from the past, projecting them future, worried about them in a particular gripping sort of way. And like, no, what's awareness? What's attention? What's in the embodied real? And certainly you can use your mind to project problems and anticipate them. But if you're living in your mind, you're really not engaged in the world or committed to the valued states of being that you have, and ACT is about that, and UTOK embraces that, and that's what I see very clearly in this. It feels, and my structure is pretty low on rumination and worry and self-consciousness, but I would say I dropped a point in the last two. If it was a 10-point scale, I'm a 3 to a 2 or a 2 to a 1 even. And this actually showed up. So I have meet the guy Faisal. He's in our psychology group, and we just meet every week just to get caught up and discuss theoretical stuff. And it's always a check-in. And what I've noticed to him over the last 4 weeks, and they're not really paying attention, it just came to my mind. He's like, "Dude, how you doing?" I was like, "Actually, chill, man. I'm pretty chill." Really. I'm like centered and chill. Those are so words that I generally feel, but it's like I'm like the notch on centering and chill has gone further. So I feel very centered and chill, whereas before I was like pretty centered and chill, At least that's an experience, and that feels very consistent with what this thing is trying to do. So I will say that my personal experience, pretty easy, pretty clear, and easy flow, even less rumination, which I don't start high, a chill, quasi-flow state availability. And, I took it on my cruise vacation, took it on, go see Masya, and I'm doing it 2 or 3 times a week, in a way that is, feels cool. So it really seemed to me like it, my experience was, that's what we seem to be going for.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Gregg. Yeah. And so you can imagine, while we're doing this for mental wellness as opposed to illness, you can imagine as people have even more rumination or neuroticism, that people will have even a greater magnitude of change because they had more to change from, which becomes kind of a godsend for a subset of folks. We definitely have, you could call super users that use this pretty much every day. There are other kind of cool intangibles that we don't necessarily advertise as as Zendo itself, but some people will also notice. I think in part is they're less in their mind, and this can happen with regular meditation too. So I think it's just an enhancement of a process that occurs where maybe there's sensory information or sensory capacities are enhanced, like things could be more vibrant visually, or I've had people talk about smell and taste. Some of this may be even cranial nerve stimulation into deep brain and changing some of those phenomena, but people will also comment on things like that. And so there's this, for a subset of people at least, there's this enhanced aesthetic, right? So it's lack of negativity and more calm and chill, and then also this aesthetic or sensory improvement. And what we'll see some people do is over the years now is see people use this, maybe several days in a row and then take a break. And then there's a stacking effect. And so if they're a type of a ruminative person, you may kind of knock it out, and then several days go since they've used the stimulation, and they notice their default come back, and they go, wow, I didn't realize that's what I was in, which in a good way gives people feedback. They got a little distance from that. And so they're like, hey, there's a better state of being, and I want to keep working at that. And so it has a way of enhancing other health behaviors. So they're Zendoing, they're meditating, maybe they're exercising more, maybe they work on their sleep. So if people, it's kind of like if you can get your foot in the door of improving your health, it kind of has a capacity to want to amplify itself, right? If people want, if they start to actually feel better and live better. And so that's part of our mission, that we're doing at Zendo. We're basically trying to say anywhere somebody's actually meditating, we'd love to see them using Zendo. This could be across different practices. I mean, so I've had, 100 Christian mystics buy these things to go in the void because their actual teacher said this device gets you in the void, to, very naturalistic conversations where, we're not talking about stuff like that. To Buddhist practices, people use this to enhance that way. I did one session talking with some podcast folks that talked about this as a shamatha enhancer. And so shamatha in Tibetan Buddhist language more of has to do with like learning to cultivate attention, right? And so kind of that idea of, stabilize the legs so that you can look through a telescope and see more clearly. Right, and that stabilization of the legs is your attention, right? If I can learn where my attention is and where I want to put it, that changes things a lot, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, we're back online. We just very recently got this version 2 out. People have the ability to buy it. You go to our website, zendomeditation.com. And
right. We want to put some links in the show notes here and to let people know how they can they can purchase this now. This is available, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's online, primarily through our website. We also are selling on Amazon as well, but it's zendomeditation.com.
Okay, we'll put that in there. And what is it selling for? $225 or something?
It's I believe it's $249 right now.
$249. Okay.
Yeah, and then with the MRSP at $349. So to think about taking a brain stimulation technology that's safe, it has safety features on it. So say if your pad popped out, this thing won't work. If there was some kind of problem, the device will shut itself off. It has these 4 different stimulation modes, from very light to stronger stimulation. We have an app with firmware upgrades where we could actually look at things like changing the dosing of stimulation for people. So to do all that for selling at $249 is like amazing. I wish we even at one point years ago said, if any investor wanted to just donate so we could give these away for free. Nobody took us up on that option. So we've kind of, engineered into the capitalist system to actually get this out there for people.
Well, as I told you, one of the things, and this is, as I get back integrated into possible research, I did a study on a particular kind of meditation kind of product. Why am I blanking on it? Doesn't matter, but basically a biofeedback system. I want to do a study on this. So maybe you and I will talk about writing a grant and get some of these and do it for anxious, self-conscious college students. I think this and ComMO flashlights are really would be a very powerful tag team. Give people a little bit of ideas about what a neurotic loop is, how to shine the light at the level of behavior and actual active mind 2, mind 3, and then also we can complement it with a mind 1A firmware kind of thing that you can then feed back and see your differences. I love the idea of pairing this with the ComMO with this and seeing for folks who are dealing with a lot of rumination and self-gripping and stuff like that, which of course is, the mental health crisis is no shortage of that, right? It's just no shortage. And yeah, if this coupled with some training, that's worth a lot of money for sure to in terms of suffering. So it's and relative to like meds and other things that you're on for a really long time, it's quite different. Right. So yeah.
So again, the current state, this is again for mental well-being. Some of this technology is being studied for treatment of depression and things like that. More to come on that. But yes, imagine taking a young student and changing their trajectory, right? Like helping them, give them the tools to work, like a calm MO, to work with, how do I work with my mind? How do I engage a sage mode, a wise mode, rather than this inner critic all the time? And then giving them, essentially a practice, a simple meditation, mindfulness type practice with stimulation to kind of really boost it into effect. So you're helping them operate at different, levels of their mind and really change the trajectory, right? Get them off before maybe they get on the wheel of medication and
real
I'm
disorders.
a psychiatrist.
There's subclinical. There's a subclinical world out there. A whole bunch of people on subclinical and where they end up, right?
Right. So I'm a psychiatrist. I'm not, to be very clear, I'm not anti-medication. I'm very pro. But there's a place for everything, and there's a place for, before you get to meds, what else could I do, right? And so this is another tool, leveraging technology, right? Because I've been on some podcasts where they say, well, why would we want to meditate? Shorten and compress meditation. Why would we want to compress what you get out per session or the meditation journey? And I go, well, do you walk everywhere, or do you actually ride in a car? Do you yell at everybody from a distance, or do you use a phone? We are leveraging technology already to enhance our capacities. A tool is a tool, and it depends on how you use it. But in our vision, we want to leverage technology so people do have some more capacity to work with their mind differently, so that they can actually show up in the world, bringing in their best self, aligning with their unique goals and values, as you're talking about with ACT. And imagine if you're coming from that state, you're less contracted, you're more able to show up and respond rather than react, more apt to actually maybe care, right? Imagine caring about something beyond yourself or just your group, and to actually have this expansion of care, which is certainly a side effect of any of these contemplative technologies, that people actually start to, however you want to say it, drop out their self, or their self gets bigger, where they're actually caring about everything and everyone, right? To some extent. So these are both very important at an individual level, but also at a collective level. Like, how do we get more kind and compassionate people out in the world that do show up, that have something to contribute, that's aligned with their values and kind of the larger values of life itself, right? Where this journey is going.
Totally.
So we're part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. To put it in a little Rob Scott turn, people are gripping themselves with a particular kind of identity that's transparent to them. They're not really seeing. They see through the lens, but they don't see it. We can make an opacity transparency shift here. That we can do that training in psychotherapy, or you do it through meditation. And this enhances it. It jacks up a particular type that affords embodiment, awareness, attunement to interoception, versus the default mode gripper that's like, why am I? What's relevant for me? Is this important? How do I make, a difference in the world? Oh my God, I'm not being enough. I'm not enough. I can't do. That's a default mode self-consciousness. Man, if we could figure out a way to help people boost the turn down of that, turn up both the concepts of it, the learning of it, and the Mind 1A firmware, well, heck. That's a wonderful path towards health and well-being that I think is underdeveloped. So it's a beautiful addition to the emerging potential positive psychiatry, positive psychology kinds of enhancement of ways of being in the world that the wisdom traditions have been pointing to for thousands of years, really.
Right.
So
exactly. That's the other reason it's okay to say let's conserve and use what's been useful, but to upgrade what we're doing, right? And if we need it now more than ever, right? And so,
amen to that.
Yeah, together, right? We're in this together, and so we might as well up-level ourselves and each other for mutual well-being, right? Our collective well-being, because it's all tied together.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And then I did want to, I don't know if, I think we're about to feel the natural pause of about to wrap up for folks that are interested, going to our website, it'll be in the show notes. And then there'll be a discount code, 15% off. That's UTOK, UTOK, uppercase.
Perfect.
So
okay. Yeah, we'll give that.
Hopefully for folks watching, we'll be able to remember that one, but yeah.
Amen. Well, this has been wonderful. Yeah, we'll make sure we get the right links and guides to the proper place for the purchase for those that are interested in it. I mean, to me, obviously, this binds right with our mindedness revolution. There's a way, in a naturalistic way, we've been kind of mind blind, and there are now ways to bind psychology, philosophy, psychiatry together, both at the level of, how do we think about it? How do we embody it? And then how do we help our Mind 1A firmware coordinate that process, because it is crucial for the context, right? So this is a beautiful technology. And one other thing I should say is I don't really see hardly any downsides, right? I mean, in terms of negative side effects or things along those lines, right? We can be pro-med, but meds have some, I don't think you don't have to go too far and be like, actually, that also comes with some really negative side effects. That's why I like CalmMO flashlights. Very limited negative side effects about CalmMO flashlights. It seems that there's also very limited negative side effects. A little tingling on your head, a time issue, but in terms of real negative. So that's another huge thing. I think tinkering with stuff that has lots of negative side effects, that I'd be really cautious about that. Doesn't seem to have that. So that's another real plus as to why I was like, this thing's mostly good, right? And really potentially very good, and a one-time deal. So it seemed the value, return on investment seems very obvious to me. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gregg. Yeah, it's, this has definitely been a passion. I do other things for money. This is not a thing I make money doing at this point, but it's something really important to me, and it's part of my own motivation to bring goodness into the world. Same with Bashar. Like this is, and so we vacillate trying to grow in the forms that you need in a capitalistic system, which is needed. But this is, if we could just get this out to everyone today, we would, right? And it's part of our journey to bring goodness into the world. So, and your point, not a lot of downsides at this point. So, this type of technology has been around actually for a while. It's just we're using it in a unique way, and future state, as hopefully as we continue to grow, we will. This is more of a, I guess, another point, just minor point I will say is this is a stimulator, not a tracker. So people might be used to certain headbands that are reading EEG, and that's part of our next phase as we sense and stim. And so more to come in terms of sense and stim, whether we want to throw some AI into that in terms of reading the data analytics and also the type of perhaps feedback to an individual. So more to come on that. Yeah. Right now we're at the STEM phase, right?
All right, man. Well, it's good to see, right? And then my dream is to get CalmMO flashlights. You get a whole little website interfacing and the path to Mind 4, right?
Right. So you throw an AI analytic that has CalmMO on it, right? And so it's walking people through meditation and CalmMO, and they could use it independent of the STEM, or they could read the data analytics to say you're due to Zendo today, or you're due for the, or the next day wakes, you're doing pretty good. You just hold off today, right?
Yeah.
Be useful, awesome. And very doable. So,
all right,
awesome.
Man.
Well, thank you, Gregg. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this was always been, as you know, that we've talked about it in many different occasions, always been a really exciting, positive, innovative, creative, and potential real fundamental trailblazing pathway. And I'm super happy to have mine. It's definitely, I'm happy. It's certainly been worth $350 to me. So seriously consider it. So, all right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gregg.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Absolutely.